Welcome to another episode of the Ironforge podcast. This is a podcast where I interview clients, entrepreneurs, team members, and investors to hear their unique take on entrepreneurship and the startup community. My name is Chris Roach. I'm, of course, your host, and I'm delighted to say today that I am joined by one of my colleagues, business partner, and chief operations officer here at The Forge, Mr. Jeremy Millian. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I look forward to kind of seeing what it's all about. And I know I've seen a lot of your previous podcasts before, so I'm excited to finally be a part of it and kind of see what you have.
Yeah, we took a quick break from the Meet the Team series. We had a couple of clients that were sending us emails and requesting to be on it, so we had to take a little bit of a break from the Meet the Team series. But we know we've got you coming on it this week, and I think in the next couple of weeks we've got our CEO Sumner coming on as well as we had Ian 2 weeks ago. So we are getting back in there with a couple of our team members. Now you are the Chief Operations Officer here at Ironforge, which sounds terribly fancy. What is it exactly that a Chief Operations Officer here at The Forge does, and what's your kind of day-to-day in your role within the company?
I guess what don't I do? It seems to kind of spread a wide breadth of things, but I guess on a day-to-day basis, one of the biggest things is kind of overseeing all the active projects and active clients that we have, either in design, development, or discovery process. Just making sure that my project managers are managing them correctly. They're staying in communication with all the clients, making sure they have everything they want, ultimately keeping everything moving forward. We work on anywhere between 30 to 50 projects at any given time. So keeping all of that stuff moving forward and on track is definitely a full-time job. Also dealing with a lot of the contracting on the backside. Any larger client relations that kind of come through the doors, training project managers, hiring technical writers, training PMs, working very closely with yourself as a chief revenue officer and Sumner, the CEO, just kind of keeping the whole ship moving forward in the right direction. So.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I know what you do on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, we've been working with you. A lot of people that I think have worked with you in the past, assume, well, you're a project manager, so you're just going to be working with me on this project. And I think little do they know there's 1,000 other things that you have on a to-do list on a day-to-day basis to be able to work with. One of the things, having that much on your plate, how do you find balancing, all of those different hats that you have to wear? And, a lot of people, when they say, be an entrepreneur, you have to wear many hats when you're first starting. And really, your role in the company is ever changing, and you're kind of going where the company needs you most at any point. So how do you manage having those different hats that you wear and being able to pivot and shift your role within the company?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a long process getting to this point. It's taken a lot of time to really understand, where I'm needed, backing off on certain areas that maybe I don't need to be there, taking a step back and trying to oversee the whole thing. One of the biggest things that I've found that really helps me run my life now is a calendar. I live and die by it. If it's not on the calendar, I probably am not going to show up there, just because it notifies me everywhere I need to go, what meetings I need to attend, and really helps me schedule out my week, whether it be scheduling time for the gym or scheduling time to go out to dinner, whatever it may be. I mean, people can look at my calendar in our company and they see pretty much everything on there. Whether it be, going on a date or whatever that is, it's on there. So that's one of the big things I do to kind of help me plan my week, my month, and my day-to-day.
And then your role, as you said, you're a project manager with some of our larger clients, and your role is always to communicate between them and the developers, the designers. You're really the go-between on some of our larger projects, then ultimately, project managing our project managers. So you really see this project management as a whole. What is the importance of a project manager in the design and the development stage, not only with Ironforge, which in the industry as a whole, because not every company has specific project managers. And I think that's where a lot of projects potentially go sideways.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things to stress, and our project managers are quite different than most companies and what their day-to-day jobs are. But I think really the biggest thing is keeping the same project manager throughout the client's entire life cycle to make sure they can carry everything with them through the entire process. We do have backups in place, as far as documentation and things. If somebody were to get sick or be gone for a week, where somebody else can step in. But ultimately, keeping that same flow, communication, and really building a relationship with the client, throughout their life cycle. Some clients we've been working with for over 3 years now, and others, we probably will be working with them for 3, 5, 10 years in the future. So it's really, creating that almost bond between the project manager, who is ultimately their, main point of communication throughout their whole project. And it really becomes somebody they can trust and say, hey, I need to get this done. What's the best way we can approach this problem to try and bring this to fruition?
Yeah, and I think that's something that I personally, I know I struggle with discovery stage, because I work with a client in the discovery stage. They sign a contract, they move on to design, move on to development. That's the last I ever see them, until they call me and tell me, hey, we've launched the app and we want marketing advice now. And, but until, usually for a 6 month period, they're working with a team. That's not something where I necessarily work with them, because, I build a relationship, and then my role is to, continue on to the next client, continue to work with the next client on the discovery. Whereas our project managers, either Kendra, Sandra, yourself, whoever it is that works with us during this discovery stage, they do pass on with them. And I know that's been a really positive feedback when we're having those handoff meetings and we're having the conversation with clients, when we can turn around and say, actually, you're going to carry on working with Kendra, carry on working with Sandra, carry on working with Jeremy as you go through. You have the ability to be able to then take that prior knowledge, and there's not this onboarding of education that I think is where a lot of companies pass it up, and you have another issue then of things being misunderstood.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of our clients are dealing with some pretty complex problems. So trying to keep that clarity throughout, each project, whether it be one project over the course of 6 months, going from, discovery to design to development, or we have some clients, one of our large ones in particular, who he has 4 active projects with us currently, and bringing somebody else in, in the middle of a process is quite difficult. So keeping that, same face throughout the entire process definitely helps us, move through and keep that relationship going forward. And we, like I said, we have as many backups as possible to try and document everything. And if something were to go bad, we have, all of that stuff there to kind of keep moving forward with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with your standpoint, you've obviously not been a project manager for 10 years. This is something that I think you came into in the last couple of years, relatively new to. But before that, you have been involved in previous technology startups, which I think allows you to have a little bit more of an understanding of not only what's possible with the technology, but also on managing client expectations. Like myself, you ran your own previous technology startup before joining Ironforge. Can you talk a little bit on your experience with that, kind of maybe just some of the industry that you're in, and really how that has helped you evolve into the project manager and chief operations officer that we see in front of us today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really unique perspective. I think most project managers that would be in my position, or chief operations officers, have never had the experience of launching their own tech startup or having companies that they've run in the past. It really allows you to understand from the other side of the coin of exactly what clients want. Because most of the time they don't know how to explain it to you or tell you exactly like some of the frustrations they may have, or how to explain what they're looking to do ultimately with their software development or design process. So it's given me a great perspective to be able to kind of see it from both sides. And I think I brought, a lot of great things to the company of like how we can better communicate to our clients. I know that was one of the big things when I was dealing with tech startup, is just the communication and, the documentation ultimately throughout the process of making sure to understand what the client actually wants. I mean, it sounds very simple, but one of the biggest things is really making sure we understand everything from start to finish, which is why we go through so much documentation process, and just making sure everybody's on the same page and that we can actually like get their vision and produce it ultimately in the final product.
And I think and I don't know if you remember, I remember one night back in, I think it was either December or January of this year, me and you were sat having a beer talking, and we're laying some of the frustrations that we'd had when we'd run our own startups, working with, different technology and different software development companies that we'd worked with in the past before, obviously working with Iron Forge. And one of the big things that we said is the most frustrating thing is it doesn't matter where you go, who you talk to, they always give you a price. And you sat there and you're thinking, how the hell do you know what price they give me? You know absolutely nothing about my product, and yet you're going to give me a price to be able to develop something after a 30-minute conversation. And, you know, an hour later, a few days later, and the discovery process was born. And that's something that, you know, we implemented in December. And since then, I mean, we've performed over 80 discovery processes just this year. And, you know, we've really seen the not only the conversion rate from discovery to continue on with design development, but just the value that we can bring by being able to spend a little bit of time up front and know the position that our clients are in. And that's the biggest thing is, you know, when you come to Iron Forge, whether you're a non-technical founder, whether you're a technical background, whether you are a team and industry expert, we have members of our team that have all been in that position that you're in. And therefore, whoever's going to be working with you is going to have some experience with that and be able to touch on a lot of things that you're probably experiencing and a lot of things that you maybe don't realize that you're experiencing and realize that you should be thinking about. We can suggest those for them, which ultimately is going to lead to a better process and ultimately a better experience working with Iron Forge.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember the day we were sitting there and trying to think of a better way to understand what clients actually want. You know, and you and I kind of put our heads together and basically created what the disco process is now. It's come a long way, you know, in the past year, but I think it's amazing to see how helpful it is to really understand and pull out all the information that we need from a client and understand, you know, what their dream, you know, ultimately is. I mean, a lot of the people that we deal with, whether it's a startup company who comes to us with a one sentence idea, you know, is the big thing that I always say. It's like, hey, I want to build a ride sharing app. It's like, okay. And going through this discovery process, we're able to actually build them a business, is really what it is. Or you have individuals that come with us and say, hey, I have this problem. I need your help trying to solve it. So no matter where people come from or where their business is at, the discovery process has truly been a key component to help us understand their business, but I think also help the clients understand, you know, what the possibilities are and how we can help them, you know, ultimately achieve their goal.
Yeah, and I think it was one of our clients was on the podcast, 4 or 5 weeks ago now, and we asked them, you know, what's the value of the discovery process, and they said it helps us flush out the ideas. Now, that client actually loved it so much they're about to start their second discovery process with us for an entirely different project, and that's obviously going to be another great experience working with that particular client. But it really does help the clients and the non-technical founders, the industry experts, the entrepreneurs that we work with on such a close and frequent basis understand what's possible and have a second set of eyes, look at it and go, actually, you know, maybe that monetization strategy doesn't work. Maybe you should look at doing this, this, and this. And we're not here to tell you the exact way to do it, but we can tell you what we've seen successful with the hundreds of clients this year we've worked with. And we can tell you what we've seen has been unsuccessful with the hundreds of clients this year that we've worked with. And there are trends, and we've started to notice a lot of those trends. And having that insight, I think, provides tremendous value to any of our clients that are on the edge about doing the discovery process. It really allows you to flush out the concept and be able to give them hopefully some constructive criticism, and then be able to lay out a path forward to actually get to market, fundraise, you know, gather the capital, whatever that strategy is. Now, with your startups, you know, when you ran your previous startup, the technology startup, you did fundraise, correct? When you were starting off the business.
Yeah, I mean, we went through, we obviously put a lot of personal capital in and gave up a lot of things. But ultimately, yes, we did end up raising some capital, which is one of the hardest things to do in a startup community, even now more so with everything going on with COVID. But yeah, we were able to successfully raise. You know, we went through multiple different iterations of our product to finally get to the ultimate end result. You know, but having kind of a technical team behind us, you know, was one of the really big things that helped us. It's just one less thing we have to worry about. You know, being a CEO and running my own businesses in the past, I mean, a lot of things come on top of you, and anything you can kind of give off to somebody you trust to handle a piece of that business is super helpful to kind of make, you know, what we have today. So
Awesome. And you weren't always working in the technology space, were you? And there are some stories that we are going to get into later with some of your previous ventures, because I know what you did before you did that, and I don't think everybody, even in the company, knows. So before working with your technology startup, you had a couple of other businesses that I think did okay, and then either you didn't have the passion for, you stopped doing. Some of them did very well, some of them didn't do so well. What other type of industries and companies have you worked with prior to getting into specifically the technology space?
Um, oh boy, there's quite a few of them. My own companies that I've run outside of my full-time career before getting into the tech industry. The first startup was a DJ company. I kind of did that on the side, did weddings on the weekends, DJ'd for a bunch of formals for the sororities in college. So it was a really fun thing. I didn't really look at it as a business for a while until I started getting some repeat clients, had a bunch of weddings that I DJ'd, and really had an amazing time. Met a lot of really cool people, and that was kind of during my college career. I just DJ'd a wedding, I think probably 9 months ago, for a friend of mine who said, "Hey, I need a DJ." I'm like, all right. So I pulled out all my stuff out of the basement, and went there and then had a great time. So that was, one of the ones, throughout my college career, that I've done. And every once in a while, I'll dabble a little bit here and there. I also had my own lawn business called Lawn Scholars. That was another startup that I had with another friend of mine in college as well. That we ran for a year or two. It sounded like an amazing idea to start off with. And until you have to go and mow all the lawns, I think in our first 6 months, we closed like 35 contracts. So we're mowing 35 lawns and trying to find people to basically hire to mow them. So that was, one of the big things. I've also, one of the bigger ventures I had before, coming into the tech industry was a taxi company. So we basically went into Little Whitewater, Wisconsin. And one of the biggest things that we found there is that there's really no good taxi service. There's no way for college students to get around from, after a long night out on the town to get back home safely. They had a company there that really didn't do anything. They didn't show up. It took over an hour to get anywhere. And it's like, okay, I think this could be a business idea. So we went and started a company, bought this van and kind of decked it out with a bunch of lights and iPads and all this stuff. And it worked out great for months. And then all of a sudden, this other company came in and basically just killed our business. We couldn't keep up with the amount of taxis that they brought in. I mean, they're a nonprofit organization, so they're subsidized by the government and everything else. So, ultimately the taxi piece didn't work. So we iterated again and bought a bus and turned it into a party bus company. So we ended up basically, for a couple of years, we had a party bus that would be booked out by, bachelorette parties, or, I mean, you name it, we did it. That was a lot of fun as well. Definitely learned a lot in that experience, kind of growing throughout. Ultimately, in the long term, we decided to kind of shut the doors and move on to bigger and better things at that point. But those are just a couple of other businesses I've had in the past, just very high level. And while all of this was going on, I was a full-time college student going to get my business degree in sales and marketing, which I finally did finish. Took me, I think, 4.5 years, but I did it while working full-time, paid my way through school. Which, not many people can say that. Was also president of my fraternity for multiple years in college, all while kind of running these businesses. And then was in the auto industry, was kind of my, career path at the time throughout college. So, I started when I was 18, working as a sales guy at a car dealership. in between all of my classes and everything else I had going on. I think I worked 48, 50 hours a week, plus went to school full time, and then ran some of these startup companies on the side. And yeah, I did that for a long time. And that's really where I learned a lot throughout that span, not only for client relations, but sales, management. I kind of moved my way up over the course of 6 years, from sales to, senior sales representative. Then I did inventory management. So I would do all the car ordering, pretty much everything in the auto industry, managed detailers, worked with the sales managers, and then ultimately moved up to a finance manager. And I did that for a year and a half. And then I had an opportunity within the same company to move up to general sales manager, basically running a team of salespeople, running all the inventory at 2 auto dealerships. So yeah, I've had a busy life, but honestly, it's given me a ton of experience and a lot of what not to do's, and really helped me kind of get to where, I am today to, help clients that we have coming through the door and give some different perspective in a lot of different industries that I've been a part of.
Well, let's talk about making that jump, because you work your way up through a specific company. Obviously, it's in college, so you still relatively early on, you still have the ability to say, all right, I can do anything. I'm 23 years old. Who cares? I can always come back. But you've actually worked your way up through a successful company, quite a big name car dealership. And you're at a point where you're now a regional sales manager, 2 different operations that you're managing. And then you say, all right, I'm going to quit it all and I'm going to go and run a tech startup. How is that leap? And, a lot of people talk about doing that when you're in your mid 40s, because a lot of people, it takes them that long to get to that point. Now, you've already been a high achiever. You've already got to the point that a lot of people go to business school to get to that point, and you've done it before you even graduated. And then you say, all right, guys, I'm out. I'll see you later. I'm going to go and try my own thing. And then, how was that adjustment, and what allowed you to have the confidence to make that leap, having gone from making a paycheck to suddenly not making a paycheck?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make. I worked on kind of this business idea, for a while before I ultimately made the decision to do it. But it really came down to where I saw myself in the long term, or even the midterm. And really the biggest thing was owning, and running my own company, whatever it was. Obviously, through all my previous endeavors, you can see that I've always wanted kind of my own thing, and to be a part of something, bigger. And it took a lot of time for me to leave the company I was at. I mean, I truly loved everybody I worked with. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I was good at it. And most people would have just stayed there. They would have kind of lived out for 30, 35, 40 years and just done that same thing and been happy. But I always knew that, I wanted more. I wanted what was next for me, kind of the next chapter in my life. And it was, I wanted to kind of have my own business. So had this great idea, worked through multiple different iterations, and that's kind of how I got into the tech industry. And got a hold of Iron Forge, and that's one of the reasons that I'm here now. But making that leap, selling everything I owned. I mean, I had a house that I had purchased while I was in college. In between all of this, selling all my toys, motorcycles, boats. I mean, just getting rid of everything, and kind of putting it all on the line for this next big thing. Is what I did. So just kind of went and went for it. And yeah, I guess the rest is history, because now I'm here. So
yeah, because I always think it's interesting, because a lot of the clients, a lot of entrepreneurs that we talk about, and for myself, people say, oh, well, you were so brave to start a business out of college. And in my head, I'm thinking, I had no expenses. I had no mortgage. My rent was like $1,000 a month. I knew I could run a business 60 hours a week while working at a bar 20 hours a week and cover everything that I needed to do, and I could still go out on the weekends. So I remember thinking, I was like, it's really, for me, it was the opportunity cost. I wasn't selling things to do that. I wasn't personally investing my own capital because I didn't have any to invest. And that's why when people say, oh, like when you started Recruit, how is it still, it's been going for 3 years with the capital you raised? Well, it's because we've always been very lean. We've never had to invest significant capital. We started lean. We've always operated lean. We've always had the mentality of when the worst happens, we're prepared. So we know we'll survive. Things like COVID, when the entire athletic departments of the country shut down, and we knew for us that was fine. We'll battle down some of the advertising and we'll get through that. Whereas for you to take that leap and jump in, I think has a tremendous amount of courage, because you're putting your own money on the line. Yes, you raised outside capital. A lot of clients do. But what we say to a lot of our clients who are starting, they go, I want to build this. Great. Well, it's going to be $150,000. Great. Well, for $15,000, we can build you a prototype. Okay. Well, I don't have $15,000 to invest. And at some point as the entrepreneur, you have to either shit or get off the pot. You have to put your own money in. And the way we do it with the prototype and the development and the fundraising often allows entrepreneurs to do that for a fraction of the price, to be able to really justify. And that's why we do it that way. That's why I encourage clients to do that. But as for any of our clients that are listening, and for anybody that's listening that's thinking about starting a business, at some point you have to make that jump and back yourself. And you can't always play with other people's money. If you've not got your own skin in the game, it can become very, very difficult for you to be a notable company to invest in, because why would I invest in you when you've not got your own money in it? And I think that for you allowed you to go on and fundraise, to be successful, to generate the traction that you did, and then ultimately obviously led you to bigger and better things, having now kind of moved on to Iron Forge and really heading up our entire operations department and entire project management for a much larger company now. And it still allows you to have that entrepreneurial mindset. I think with the team that we have at Iron Forge, the fact that we are all entrepreneurs and we're a bunch of really CEOs that were put in the same team and said, go and be the CEO of your own department. It's like, great, like we can do that. And, obviously we have a lot of departments that work very closely. I know mine and yours work very closely together. But we had the ability to really run them as our own little companies within the company. And that, I think, has led to the success we have, is that you had a lot of very high performers, a lot of type A people that you put in a room and said, go and make this happen. It sounds like a recipe for disaster, and it has just really hit the nail on the head by just allowing people to go on and be high performers, but with the support where your weaknesses are covered by people who that's their strengths.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest, I guess, pieces of advice that I can give for, what I went through. I mean, going from making great money in college and having all these things. One of the coolest things that I got out of all of it was really understanding things that you can live without, with having to sell everything and not having a paycheck for 10 months, and not much money in your savings account to kind of live. It really helps you put in perspective of what things you actually need to survive and what things you actually want. So it's really helped me understand kind of those differences, and a lot of the things I had, it's like, okay, I don't really need any of this. So that was one of the big things. And I guess the second one is, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't take a risk. It was the biggest risk I've ever taken. Obviously I've taken risks on the other companies, and it didn't work out, but ultimately, it's a huge learning experience. And if I had to go back and do it again today, I absolutely would, because the amount that I've learned throughout that process has been, I mean, you can't, there's no monetary value to it. It really, helps you put a lot of things in perspective, and, whether it works out or not, it's always a learning experience. And as long as you kind of look at it that way, it's definitely going to help you move on to the next big thing.
No, I agree 100%. I think I was talking with San, one of our clients, a few weeks back, maybe in a couple of months back now, and we were talking about the MBA versus the startup and which is more valuable. And both of us said startup, hands down. The things you're going to learn doing that far surpass what any in the classroom education can get for you. Now, you did say, you've learned what you can live without. You've learned what it's like to really strip down and go to basics. Now you have this fake background that you've put on right now, but you're not fooling anybody. Where are you currently located at the moment? And let's talk about your current living situation, because this is one that I find fascinating. And I know people listening are going to be interested to hear the story of how this happened. And can we have a quick tour of your current location?
I don't know about a tour. It's kind of a mess, but I could take the background off. So yeah, we, as a company kind of made a decision to invest in a couple of different RVs for some of our staff to kind of travel the country. So I'll pop my background off. This is an actual photo, by the way, of where I am currently up on the mountain. I took this last Saturday, just to put that in perspective. But you can see I'm in an RV, have started the RV life and been able to, kind of travel the country over the last couple of months, and look forward to kind of seeing what else is out there in the world. It's definitely a crazy time with everything going on nowadays with COVID and people being on lockdown, and really having the ability to pick up and go anywhere I need to go within a matter of a couple of hours is truly incredible. Especially now where you kind of do need to be remote, away from people, so we can continue running our business. But, ultimately, we've been able to run a tech company on the road. We have myself and Sumner, our CEO, which I think he'll be popping on next week. He's right next door to me right now. We're up in northwestern Montana, Coram, about an hour from Canada. We've been up here for about the past month now, and it's truly been incredible, being able to work every day, in a company that I love, and also be able to see some of the most amazing views in the world has really been incredible. And hopefully, our goal with the whole RV and mobile office and mobile team is, once COVID's over with, is actually to be able to be anywhere we need to be for our clients. Being able to meet in person and be anywhere in the country, I think is going to be a really unique experience for us as people in the company, but also our clients, being able to be there in person for some of their major events, or if they're starting a new development project. I mean, I can go on the road and I can meet them in their office and be face to face. I mean, there's no company that I know that's able to be pretty much anywhere in the country within 48 hours notice. It's pretty incredible, if you ask me. So
yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's a fantastic story of how really COVID allowed us to kind of realize. I mean, we've all worked remote, been in the office, the last couple of years. And, for me personally, when we were suddenly in California and San Diego, and they said, hey, you're going to be on lockdown, I'm thinking, I'm not going to notice anyway. I work from home. I go to the gym. I go to the grocery store. That's it. So for me, I was like, I'm not really going to notice. I remember having that conversation with clients back in March, and they said, hey, how's it been since you shut down the office? Thinking it's been about the same. Actually, our productivity has gone through the roof. So yeah. For us now, 6 months later, we've all worked remote. I've had, Kendra, Sanzana, Nick, Jara on the podcast who, Jara I've not seen for, months. The other three I've never met in person. We have employees now all over the place who are proving this concept of being able to successfully work remote. And then to take that a step further, we're now saying not only can you work from home, but you can work from anywhere. You have Wi-Fi. I mean, you're in the middle of Montana. Your Wi-Fi is as crystal clear as mine. I'm in, San Diego in a house, and you're in the middle of Montana in an RV. The Wi-Fi is crystal clear. We can hear you perfectly well. And for all intents and purposes, you can now work from ever. And I think this is going to be a huge change in the way that people work, and especially tech companies. I can see I know you see Google and Facebook, they've made small changes to do things like this, but more and more companies, I think, are going to follow this path of saying there is no need now to be in one location. You can be wherever you want, and you can really become this digital nomad and be able to travel around. And and see some beautiful sights whilst also being productive and
Mhm.
getting your work done without the hassle of distractions of, you know, either being at home or being in an office with people where you're just not as productive.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely another big life change, to go from being a homeowner and kind of having all of this stuff, to now I take my home with me anywhere and everywhere I go. Hook it up to the truck and kind of just go wherever I need to. But yeah, like you said, I mean, we can now work from anywhere. I mean, I'm on basically the base of a mountain, in Glacier National Park, and I'm working. Next week I'll probably be in Las Vegas for a while. Then I'll be heading down to San Diego, back to our place down there for a little bit. But just being able to be mobile and not be stuck anywhere, and be wherever we're needed to be. It's really a big relief, honestly, to be able to do that. I mean, especially how much we work all the time. To be able to take, a weekend on a Saturday or Sunday off for a couple of hours and go see some, amazing mountain views or float down the river, whatever it may be. I think this is really going to be the future of companies, and we're kind of on that, pinnacle piece. And so far it's been working out pretty well. So.
Good. And how long have you been doing the RVs for? How long have you been full time in the RV?
I think it's been 6, 7 weeks so far. So not a ton of time, but I truly enjoy it. I thought it was definitely going to be a little bit of a struggle. I mean, obviously you have a much smaller kitchen, than most places, but I still have a closet. I still have a king size bed. I have a shower, refrigerator, fireplace. You have my dog bed that you can see behind me. So he kind of travels with me wherever I go. But yeah, I mean, it's refreshing to know that at any moment, no matter what's going on in the world, you can pick up and kind of move to the next place, wherever that may be. I mean, obviously we can go anywhere in North or South America. It just takes some time to get there. So.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely going to get you back on the podcast in 6 months and make sure that you're still in just as high spirits with it. But no, I think it's an amazing opportunity. I think the fact that you have the ability and the flexibility to be able to do that is fantastic. I know, it's something where we all love traveling. I know we have a joke with our clients when we talk to them and they say, "Where are you?" And the state changes all the time. It allows us to have that flexibility to be able to move around. And it's something where I think it really is at the forefront of that next step of working from home, because this is now becoming more and more of a trend of, I don't want to sit in my kitchen table in my one bedroom apartment at work. It's miserable. And I'm paying, if you're around in LA or even in San Diego, a one bedroom apartment, you're paying $2,000 a month to have this experience, which, to be honest, is not worth it when you can see about the other options. But no, I mean, Jeremy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I do want to be obviously respectful of your time, because I do know how busy you are, and I don't
got
want
another
to.
Meeting here in a few minutes, so
that's what I was thinking. So I do appreciate your time on this. Thank you for taking time out of your hectic schedule to come on for this quick interview. We will be posting this video and podcast shortly. If you are out there listening and you're an entrepreneur and you would like to be featured, you can reach out to me directly at roach@ironforge.co. Otherwise, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.